hello again. Can we talk about the MacBook Pro? As I just bashed myself in the face there. So this is the second video of these that I've done where there's going to be no cuts, no edits, no B-roll. I'm just going to be chatting for you, to you. And originally with the first video, it was just going to be for 10 minutes. That completely went out the window. So I'm just going to call it Let's Talk About, Let's Chat About. I don't know, it's a working title. But the reason for the MacBook Pro is because I actually have a few of them. This is my little Apple store. Please don't come and rob my house. They're actually mostly empty boxes, to be fair. But I use my MacBook Pro specifically, although I have a couple of Airs, every single day. This is like my workhorse of a laptop. And I've been using it, well, I've been using it since I switched from the Dell XPS series. If you are a long-term subscriber on the channel, you'll know that I used to use the XPS 15 for years. I'm just going to take a second there because I've forgotten to breathe. It's so weird making these videos. I'm not going to redo this, I'm not going to make any cuts. It's because normally when I shoot a video like this, it's all like energy, you know, attack the camera, but not going too overboard. But you want to be engaging for the viewer, for you. But now I'm like just here talking to you, and I've done a few things on stage before, and it's such a problem I have. I forget to breathe. I get like energy, and then I'm like, I can't breathe. maybe I'm just so excited to talk about the MacBook, but I am a bit. Anyway, now I've regained my breath. Let's talk about it. So since the M1 Pro came out in November 2020, that's when I started my switch to the Apple ecosystem, actually, because I used to use Samsung phones and OnePlus phones. I used to use Dell XPSs. I have a Windows desktop. I've still got all those things here as well. But the M1 Pro was such a game changer in it coming from Intel. And it's kind of poignant that this year with the Tahoe Mac OS, the new Mac OS is coming out in September, I believe that's going to be the last one that will actually support the Intel-based MacBooks. So if you are still running one of those, and why are you doing it? Come on, you can buy a cheap used one of these from like the last 3 or 4 generations and it'll be hugely better. Maybe now is like the time to actually upgrade. Now, the trouble is, Apple made it too good, didn't they? Because the M1 Pro came out with the MacBook Pro, and it was a huge leap forward in performance, in cooling, battery life. That was a big one. And with the M2, the M3, the M4, you know, we've got like 15, 20, 30% faster each time. We've got more decoders and encoders. You can, as Apple likes to demonstrate, you've got like, you can edit 8K, 6 8K 60 simultaneous streams of ProRes and DaVinci Resolve like you're editing for Pixar or something, and obviously I'm not doing that. Although, to be fair, these are, I mean, it's in the name, professional. These are almost industry standard products, to be fair, and actually everywhere I go, as much as I love a Windows laptop, as much as I think there are pros and cons for each, Windows versus Mac, and that's going to be a conversation for a different video, I see more of these than anything else, and I absolutely love it. To the point where, despite this actually is a review sample from Apple, and this video is sponsored by Apple. No, that's not true. Can you imagine if they did sponsor it? They've actually never sponsored anything with me, so basically anything you've ever heard me say or will hear me say about Apple is entirely my own opinion. And I basically use the best tech that there is out at the time, that for me at least, and obviously everyone has different use cases, but right now I still think the MacBooks Airs and Pros are the best laptops out there. And you can see I use it a lot because one of my big gripes with this, and I've said about this in my reviews, is that it gets so greasy. Can you see that on the trackpad and the keys there? And then that imprints on the screen. Am I the only one? I don't think I am, because I've asked this before in reviews, and some people say, oh yeah, that is just you. You know, what are you doing? Clean yourself, or something. But other people say, yeah, I get that as well. It's one of my few complaints about the MacBook, and we'll come to sort of a wish list of what's going to come with the next one, hopefully before the end of the year. But in the meantime, the reason I am now primarily in the Apple ecosystem is because I got the MacBook with the M1 Pro, which was fantastic, and then I thought, well, you know, now I might need to get an iPhone, or use the iPhone as my main phone, because then I've got AirDrop and continuity. And then you think, well, at that point, I might as well get a pair of AirPods, because that all, you know, syncs nicely between them. And then when you've got that, you think, well, I wouldn't mind a touchscreen kind of MacBook-y thing. iPad. And I make obviously all these buying guides and I review all this stuff. And so generally either Apple will send me the review unit or I'll buy it myself, some combination of the two depending on the product, just because I like to test them. Also, they're pretty popular. I think if I just made, well, I know for a fact, if I just made Samsung and Apple videos every day, all week, all year, I might go crazy. I probably will go crazy, but my channel will be much bigger. I would get more views. I could make more AdSense money, but I would get so bored. I love the variety of the tech that I get to cover, from like, foldables and TVs, cars, all that stuff. So Apple obviously is very popular. I think the MacBook Air is the #1 best-selling laptop in terms of just one particular device. I think more Windows laptops are sold, but not just a single version of it. And I forgot what I was talking about, but I love it. Great ports, HDMI 2.1, SD card, a couple of USBs, the MagSafe. This actually also has the Nano-texture coating. So I should mention, as I say, that this is a Apple review sample, which means they will ask for it back, usually at the end of the next cycle when the new ones come out. So new ones come out, they take the old one back, give me a new one so I can test it. But I'm also very spoiled because they sent me basically the top spec one. This has an M4 Max chip. So you've got the M4 Pro, M4 Max. We haven't got an M4 Ultra yet. We thought maybe we'd see one at WWDC, but we didn't. So M4 Max is the higher version of that because then you can get different CPU, different GPU core versions, 192 gigabytes of memory, and 4 terabytes of storage, except for the ability to spec this with 8 terabytes. This is a top spec MacBook Pro 16. And it costs about $7,000. I think it's over $7,000. I wouldn't spend that much money. I would probably get, well, Apple are probably watching this and think, I'm making a note now of what they're going to send me next year. I definitely appreciate having it, especially the RAM as well. I think 4 terabytes of storage is really nice. 8's obviously just probably a waste of money. Realistically, I think most people will be best off, if they're going to buy a new MacBook Pro, getting probably the 14-inch, if I'm honest, because that saves quite a lot of money. You can get the base 14-inch with an M4 Pro for about $1,000 less than this. It's quite a big step up to get a 16-inch, although that does get you a higher spec storage and RAM and things. So probably the 14-inch, and then the M4 Pro chip, 64 gigs of memory, 2 terabytes of storage, that sounds about right. Because beyond that, remember, just plug in an external SSD. The Thunderbolt 5 ports that you get is so future-proof that even the Thunderbolt 4 SSD drives, the external drives that you can get now, it won't max it out. So don't go overboard on buying storage. This really goes for most laptops, to be honest, because you can just get an external drive. And also, in terms of the 14 versus the 16, I always think, I kind of like the idea of the 14, because this is quite heavy. I know it's an incredibly powerful laptop, and I'm not really complaining too much, but if there was one bit of feedback for me, other than the greasy keyboard and trackpad, it would be that it's a dense boy, it's a chunky boy. So I don't think we are going to see a redesign until next year, 2026, where there's talk of the tandem OLED screen. By then we'll probably have the M6 chips, and also a slight redesign of this. Maybe a dynamic island? That would be fun. I'm kind of jumping ahead here in the video. But it is, it's quite heavy. It's about 2.1 kilograms or something like that. The 14-inch is a lot more portable, but then I'm editing videos. So a lot of my life, most of my life, in fact, is in Premiere Pro. I'm still one of those Adobe holdouts just because I know how to use it, and I know this is better optimized for Final Cut and things like that. I'm also trying to be careful not to show you things I can't yet. I think that was all under embargo actually, so I'm not going to show you. I'm not going to show you my timeline. But between the 14 and the 16, because I regularly edit videos, I need as much room as possible. But when you're, and particularly when I'm traveling, if I'm in a hotel room, if I'm at an airport or whatever, although not on an economy flight seat because then there isn't enough room for it, I find having the extra room really, really helpful. But on the flip side of that is if you are using it at the office, at the studio, at school, you're probably going to connect it to an external monitor anyway, aren't you? So then, you might not even be using the laptop screen, or it becomes a second screen. So I think for most people, 14-inch, don't go crazy on the specs, but hey, I'm not complaining. This is a fantastic laptop and incredibly powerful. I also went for I didn't go for it, they gave it to me, the Nano-texture option. So this is the first time on the Macs that we've had this. We've obviously had it on their studio displays, which was quite an expensive extra. It's only about an extra 100, I think, on the MacBooks. But you can see if I tilt it towards my studio lights. It does wash out a little bit of the contrast, which you may not like. But generally, I much prefer this. And I've been using this now for 6 months? Since it came out in November-ish? Is that more than 6 months? 8 months. I forget. I don't know what time it is or where I am most of the time. But I probably wouldn't go back from using the... You can see the greasy keyboard as well. I wouldn't go back from the Nano-texture. It's a little bit extra, but I definitely recommend it. What are we talking about? MacBooks. So yes, the Intel versions... The jump to the M1 Pro was so... You can tell this is you can tell there's no edits in this video because I'd have cut the last like 5 seconds and sharpened it up and put some B-roll over it. The jump from Intel to M1 Pro was a huge upgrade, and everyone should have done it. But then the trouble is there wasn't that significant upgrades going from generation to generation, and we don't expect this year's M5s that will likely be. I don't know. I mean, we saw this was announced and unveiled last November with the M4 series chips, and it wasn't a huge launch. They did a little thing in LA, which they invited me to, and it was a hands-on, but then they also launched new iPads. What else was it? New something else. The USB-C headphones, I think it was. But this year, we're expecting it just to be the M5 chip with the Pro and the Max. No major redesign, no tandem OLED, because it's obviously mini LED still. So, will this year be worth the upgrade? You're going to see videos with titles of like, now's the time to upgrade, jump on board the Mac train. But realistically, I would be absolutely fine. Most of us would be absolutely fine with getting like an M1 Pro or M2 Pro from 3 or 4 years ago on a deal or a sale. Spending this kind of crazy money on a new laptop, a new MacBook Pro it's just diminishing returns. They've made it hard for themselves. They are too good. What also we are seeing now, though, is macOS Tahoe, which is going to finally give us some, the big updates that we've all been asking for. Colored folders. Honestly, I think the Mac update was one of the... I was going to say one of the least significant coming out of WWDC. I think with the enhanced search bar, the command, the command space... This is what happens when you do effectively a live video and you forget the name of it. Search bar, command search, quick search, it'll come to me in a minute. You know what I mean. That's going to be hugely upgraded and actually much smarter, so I'm looking forward to that. And also things like colored folders, the liquid glass design coming to it. I think the biggest thing at WWDC was the iPad update in terms of multitasking and things, but still no like desktop applications there except Final Cut and a couple of other ones. So I need to make another iPad buying guide, I think, when the new software comes out, and play a new MacBook buying guide as well. Because a lot of people, this is just too powerful. You don't need a Pro. MacBook Air is the most popular. It's significantly cheaper, it's thinner, it's lighter. The main downside, aside from not being as powerful, is, and it doesn't really bother most people. Does it bother you? 60 Hertz on the Air rather than the 120 Hertz ProMotion on this guy? You do get used to it. But then if you plug it into an Apple Studio display, or the XDR display, they're both 60 Hertz as well. And I would have put money on Apple launching updated monitors at this year's WWDC. In fact, there wasn't any hardware, which traditionally has been the case, but the last couple of years, we've had Vision headsets, we've had MacBook Air launches. And I could have sworn we'd see maybe an M4 Ultra chip in maybe a Mac Pro desktop. They haven't updated the proper desktop Mac Pro for a long time. We also didn't get any new hardware in terms of monitors either, which was a bit disappointing because I was kind of hoping for a 120 Hertz new XDR display because it's about 5 years old now at this point, and it's still great, but you just, you get the feeling the next thing's around the corner. Where was I going with that? But yes, so 120 Hertz ProMotion, that's a big, nice sort of benefit of going for the Pro model. And also, the big one, the most underrated thing, I think, is the screen brightness. I think the Airs top out at, was it 600 nits, 500 nits? The Pros are a little bit higher, but you've got HDR with this. And you think, I don't really watch HDR videos very often, I don't really, edit in HDR or anything like that. Well, with certain apps like Vivid, I'm gonna do this live for you as I scrape my mic, that probably didn't sound very good. I'm gonna turn on this Vivid application. So this is the maximum brightness of my MacBook Pro, but then there's a couple of apps that do this, I'm not sponsored by them or anything, it unlocks the HDR brightness, the 1600 nits across the whole screen, even just in regular desktop mode, even without having, HDR content. So regular brightness, you see, and then that is a huge deal for me when I'm out and about, on and off, when I'm out sort of filming, editing, in the daylight, in bright offices, if I want to be color correcting things. Having this little bump to brightness, and as well as the 120 Hertz, that for me makes the Pro worthwhile. And you can get it on the 14-inch as well. What else we got going on? So, I got my little screen off camera here. I wish I could show you this actually, it's really interesting, but it's currently under embargo, and when this video goes out, it'll still be under embargo, so I can't show you this. With the update to the MacBook, with the update to the iPad, are fewer people going to buy MacBook Airs? Do we think? It's still a different product, isn't it? Because interestingly, this monitor, which I can't show you, I hooked up my Mac Mini to the back of it because I like the idea of sort of having my own sort of all-in-one display with a Mac Mini attached to the back, kind of like an iMac. But it's a touchscreen. That's kind of one of the points of it. But the Mac desktop, the Mac software, Mac OS, doesn't, as far as I know at least, support touch inputs. So I couldn't use it as a touchscreen. I could if I plug in my Windows laptop. So obviously there is still this main separation really, because the iPads have M4 chips as well as do the latest MacBooks. Same processors, but the difference really is that the iPad is a touchscreen and has the iPad OS apps, whereas this is a non-touchscreen Mac OS. And also the iPad has the tandem OLED display, so arguably a nicer screen. So then obviously anytime I make these buying guide videos for iPads, there's this question over should I get a MacBook or an iPad? And I think they're just still two distinct products, and it's smart that Apple don't want to cross over too much because then they'll just kill off one of them. And even though the new iPad OS 26 software is going to, significantly overhaul the multitasking, the file system, which I am excited for, it needed it. It's not fundamentally going to change the way you use your iPad, except for having slightly more seamless multitasking and using it a bit more like a desktop in terms of having different tabs and windows open that you can move around. But they're still mobile-first apps. So I always think iPads, tablets generally are like a third device. You need your phone, number one, then you need a laptop, number two, then you might want a tablet. No one really needs a tablet. Although some do, depends on your use case, depends if you have a specific app or the industry you work in needs a touchscreen, or you just like, using it as a presentation tool. But again, it's not like the number one device, I don't think. So it'll be interesting to see what Apple does later this year with new iPads, new Macs. As I say, last year, what was it, November time that they announced the MacBook Pros? I think we'll see a refresh this year as well, but it will just be a spec bump internally with an M6 chip, which I'm guessing will be like 15, 20, 25% faster, and then everyone's like, hey, look at it, buy it now, but we'll see. No one knows yet. But there are rumors of bigger updates coming, but there's also talk that's been pushed to 2026 and beyond, so who knows. I would like to see a dynamic island. I would like to see the MacBook Pros a little bit lighter, perhaps if they could change the design, the materials a little bit, the heaviness of it. It's not a big deal, but that would be a one wish list. Anti-grease keyboard. Also, again, the webcam's still fantastic, the FaceTime camera, but I would never say no to a better webcam as well. Maybe cheaper storage options as well, starting it at like a terabyte or 512, especially given how, as I say, there's just not been that many reasons to upgrade since the M1 came out back in 2020 to the new one, that unless like we saw with the MacBook Airs last year, where it sort of became 16, 512 as a default, even if the rest of the laptop wasn't that much of an upgrade, the fact that you could go in with a base model and get a much better spec without having to pay an extra 200 here, 200 here for more RAM and storage, that was more of a convincing reason to upgrade than like a slightly faster chip or a slightly brighter screen. In terms of rivals for the MacBook, well, this is so interesting because I love a Windows laptop, obviously, for gaming. MacBooks, as much as they put their effort into Metal and trying to get developers to the Apple Arcade, and it is getting better, this is still not a proper gaming laptop in any stretch, really, even though the performance, is there. So if you want to play games, if you want particularly for NVIDIA-powered Windows laptops, if you want all their accelerated AI, RTX, DLSS, ray traced, all that stuff, and also in certain apps, like I use Topaz quite a bit, which I know is significantly accelerated on Windows with an NVIDIA card. Same with Premiere Pro, and so there are some reasons why I would like a Windows laptop, but also just the variety of them. Having dual screen options, touch screen options. Generally, you can get very good options that are also more affordable, just because of the sheer range of different brands. But at the end of the day, and this is why I'm not really sure how things can ever change, because Apple make the silicon, they make the chip that goes in the laptop that they make and then runs the software that they make, that vertical integration is just so lovely and optimized that in comparison, a Windows laptop has obviously Microsoft Windows, you have an OEM like Asus, Acer, HP, Lenovo, those kind of people, Dell. What happened to Dell? What did happen to Dell? It's like I went to their big launching rebrand event last year in New York where they changed all their name. They dropped the XPS and the Inspiron and all that stuff. They kind of did like a Jaguar rebrand in, I'm going off on a tangent here, but they dropped all the brand names, so it just became like the Dell Pro, the Dell Pro Max, but then with plus. Oh, it was awful. I miss a good Dell laptop. I thought they were great. And I remember, I think it was Thomas from, if you ever watched Throttle House videos, you'll see that they use a Dell XPS laptop. And I met those guys at the F1 in Vegas a couple of years ago. I was with Snapdragon, and they were hosting us. And they were like, we know you, you're Tom the Tech Chat. You made us buy a Dell XPS laptop, and we hate it. Or something to that effect. Obviously, it's a decent laptop, but also they're still using it, and that was like a 5-year-old video. So you can probably afford a new laptop now, boys. Don't blame me. Big fan of Throttle House, and also very excited to see what they do with the Grand Tour on Amazon. That's going to be weird. Not because of them, but it's going to be a different dynamic. Anyway, Dell laptops. Miss those guys. This is what happens when I just waffle on and I completely forget what I was talking about. Dell laptops coming from a MacBook. Oh yeah, why rivals? Where are the current? What's the best current competitor to a MacBook Pro? I would probably say something like a Asus ZenBook Pro 16. Like the S16 is very nice. It's thinner and lighter. I mean, there's so many great Windows rivals, but because there we go, I'm back on track now. You've got Microsoft Windows, you've got the OEM, then you've got what else have you got? You've got the chips either from AMD or Intel or NVIDIA powering that. There's so much fragmentation, very much like we see with the Android ecosystem, but even worse than that. So much fragmentation that you just lose that efficiency. What I'm pleased to see, though, is these big upgrades on the Windows side, like with the latest generation of Intel chips and also the Qualcomm Snapdragon chips, like the X Elite, X Plus. Huge performance jumps, and also, well, depending on what you're doing, mainly big battery jumps, which I think for most people buying a laptop, a portable device, better battery is quite important. And actually, when I did one of my most recent laptop battery tests, it's on par and actually in some cases beats the MacBook Air. These aren't necessarily the best in terms of pure battery life. And actually, these aren't the best in many ways in like individual categories, but when you take it as a whole, the performance, the battery, the screen, the speakers, the webcam, the keyboard and trackpad, the support, the ports, there isn't a better laptop, in my opinion. And then you see all these new like gaming laptops or high-end workstations with like an RTX 5090, and that's also a conversation for another video about whether NVIDIA's done a good job with the new 50 series cards. You're thinking, why? Oh, it's very nice, the new Razer Blade 16, very nice. But it's also like $4,500, $5,000 if you want the top spec 5090. That's, this is also $7,000, so fair enough. But then, even with, like, you spend all the money in the world, you think, you've got this shiny new Windows laptop with the latest Intel, AMD chips, latest NVIDIA graphics, 164 whatever gigs of RAM, 8 terabytes of storage, you spend a fortune. But you still open it up, and it's still a Windows experience. And don't get me wrong, I like Windows. It's fine. But it's not as seamless, as smooth, as flawless, generally speaking, as Mac OS. And as someone who, I'm not going to turn the camera because that would probably mess up this framing. And as I say, I'm not retaking this. This has no cuts. My Windows desktop is over there, my gaming desktop. And it's absolutely fine, but once you embed yourself in like Mac OS and also to a larger extent the Apple ecosystem, it becomes this like nice, comfortable prison, and everything works, and it's not crashing as much unless you're using Adobe Premiere Pro. That's a different story. It's nice, and it can be a little hard to go back to Windows, even with like the highest end spec machines, because of that fragmentation, because you've got so many different systems and softwares and hardwares coming together. It's just never going to be as nice as using something like this. What else we got going on? So, in terms of the, I think we've covered a lot of stuff. Last time I made one of these videos, I had a little my sand timer going, which turns out was not 10 minutes, was actually an hour. That sand timer, and so I thought the reactions to the first one of these videos was it needs to be longer. It doesn't. Why confine it to 10 minutes? Just like if you're going to talk about a subject, just talk about it, and that is what I've done. And hopefully you've enjoyed it. Now, I also mentioned at the end of the last video that I would take some questions from the previous video and answer them in the next video. And honestly, there weren't any questions. I looked through all the comments. Most of you guys were just being so incredibly supportive. Like, we love the format. We love the fact that there's no, fast cuts and AI and graphics. It's just like a raw, chatty video based on someone who's experienced this product for a period of time. And it's not doing like millions of views, but what's more important to me is that you guys know me, and you get to know me, and you know what I like, what I don't like, and also as a police car goes past, see again, I have to do this again if this was a regular video because I'm like, I can't have that in the video. So most of the comments were just like, fantastic, but make it longer. Just do your thing, whatever you need to do. So the most liked comment, the top one, was from Joseph F.27. Joseph, hello. This is what we want to see from tech reviewers in this day and age of censorship. No BS, no filtering, no flashy editing, just pure authenticity and rawness. Which I'm trying to do with this. It's a balance, isn't it? Because I do branded, sponsored videos. That's part of my income, and also how I make YouTube a full-time job. But they are clearly, I will never do a sponsored review. I would never say the word review and have it sponsored. It's also clearly marked. Like, yes, like almost all other tech YouTubers, I do branded content, and that's necessary. And also, I only do the stuff that is interesting to me, like the products are interesting, or I think you're going to get value out of it. I'm not just taking on sponsorships of like pool cleaners or a million Chinese robot vacuum cleaners just because they're going to send loads of money. Like, that's not of value to you. I'm still going to show you products that are like a step forward, or from a big brand, or that are going to be interesting. So those things, generally, those sponsored videos, which are always, very clearly sponsored, they have to be a little bit more produced, and also just generally reviews, because there's often so much to talk about in terms of battery and performance and using it and cameras and comparisons with rivals, previous generations. I could sit here for like an hour or two, or I could wax lyrical about a product, and it would just go on and on and on. So I think what's important with most videos, and this is what I try to do on the channel, is keep them concise and informative, and also have a bit of fun with you at the same time. But if I just waffled on, it would be an hour long, and no one wants that. So I like the idea of making these little videos. I've sat down, I had a cup of coffee, but I forgot where I put it, so now it's probably gone cold. But we just get to talk about it. And for me, as I say, the MacBook Pro, it goes with me absolutely everywhere. So that, hopefully you now know why I love using it, and also some of the things, how it can be improved. And I think we're at the end of the video now. I'm still working on this. Stick with me. Hopefully you enjoy it. Again, any feedback, anything you think I should improve, or if I should stop doing this completely, let me know in the comments below. Also, if you've got any questions about MacBooks or anything else, I will take some of those and answer a couple of them at the end of next week's episodes. I'll try and do these once a week. I'm going to keep it breezy. It doesn't need to be, some people say, make sure you tune in at 6 p.m. on Friday. I'm just going to make these as and when I feel like I can offer something and we can have a bit of a chat. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time right here on the Tech Chat.